Welcome to KidMin Backstage, the place where we talk about kids ministry and take a peek behind the scenes. We try to share a little bit of what we've learned that works for us and some of our failures so you can avoid them. We release a new episode every Friday, and this is your Backstage Pass to see the magic or disaster that happens behind the scenes of our kids ministry. I'm your host, Gabe Baker, and today I'm joined by Brother Brent.
Hey, what's up?
How's it going?
Oh, good. It's going great.
It's going great. Just got out of a marathon of practices with kids.
Yes.
It's a good thing this is about kids.
Yes.
Right? I almost, I was joking to you that we should do the podcast with them in the background. They're just like right over in the other room singing. Because it is a kids ministry podcast, and both of us are in kids ministry, but when they all left, we both were like,
yes, sweet relief.
Peace and quiet. Oh, man. All right, well, what's the topic today?
What is the topic today? That is, will you show up?
Will you show up? When you saw that title, did you think that I meant that for you for the podcast?
Will I show up? I was like, well, of course. Yeah, you asked me to, so yeah I'm going to show up.
So in Sunday school leadership, well, in church leadership for that matter, there's this silent killer that goes unnoticed. And it's called self-consciousness. Mm-hmm. So I think that there's so many people that could they could be amazing leaders, and they get stuck being so concerned about messing up.
Right.
There's one person in our church in particular that I can think of that's very talented. I'm trying to be as vague as I can. They're really good at most of the things they do. But sometimes, not always, but sometimes they're held back because of that, because they don't want to mess up.
Right.
They're so afraid. So if we could stop being, so timid and worrying about what we might look like, maybe, we do a lot of stuff we talk about on stage, what we might look like on stage or what, people might think about us. It might, if we could take off the constraints, so to speak, and just step out and do the work of God, we'd probably be amazed at what we could actually accomplish by leaving all that stuff in the dust,
Exactly. And so that even goes to Sunday night, or not Sunday night. Well, I'm thinking I'm all backwards here, but last night at church, they sang a new song that they only practiced once. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So there was some mess up at the beginning, and afterward, so I was on sound, and it just, I was like, okay, this is different. What's going on here? Trying to figure out who was supposed to be doing solo, who wasn't, and things like that. And then so after, I was talking to a couple of the people up there, and they're like, "Oh man, we messed up so bad on this part and doing this and this." And it's
really?
I said, "Well, yeah, I noticed." I said, "But that's only because I was like, what song is this? I didn't know the song. I didn't know we were doing this." And then I said, but at the end, I said, "But I guarantee you, probably no one else, or very few, knew." That wasn't supposed to go like that, or those words, I think they messed up a word or something like that. And I said,
and we've talked about that in Sunday school. Same thing. It's like, the kids don't know.
Yeah, Heart of Christmas too. Things like that, where it's like, people are like, well, how'd it go? And it's like, it went fine. Like, no one noticed what wasn't supposed to be there or what was supposed to be there.
We often after the first night, because we've been doing a couple nights, and this year we're doing 3. But at the first night, we're like, oh man, that was so messed up. We got to make sure we fix that and stuff. And then other people are like, you messed up?
Like no. Most times, if you're not aware of it, you're not going to notice it. And again, we're our own worst critics. We'll sit there and go, oh no. And it's like,
which is needful. And I don't want to jump all over the notes too early, but I do think it is needful for us to be our worst critic. We should have our own highest standard.
Yes. Yeah.
But on the flip side, like what you are saying, is too often we think it's that person and that person. We think that they're our biggest critic, and they're not even thinking about us.
No,
or they don't even notice.
Yeah.
And then the final thing kind of in that is, if we could stop being timid and all of that. But here's where the title comes from, is imagine, if you can just think of this, imagine who is waiting for you to show up. So often we're concerned when we're looking on the inside and we're saying like, can I do this? Am I messing up? Should I do this? I've talked about the lifeguard hack before. If you're the lifeguard, nobody cares what you're wearing.
Right.
And so who is waiting for you to show up? Who's waiting and saying, I wish somebody would lead. I wish somebody would show us the way.
Yep. I see what you're saying on that. And I think you can apply that to a lot of different aspects in our church, in our different ministries, our different positions with, we'll even say not even just Sunday school, but, worship.
Oh, yeah.
Many times it's like, hey, if that one person would just
step out,
right. and it's like is it me? Maybe it should be me, right? Yeah. Like, well, what about, I'm just waiting for someone to step out.
It's like thou mighty man of valor.
Yeah,
me?
Yeah,
what? No, not me.
Me? Are you sure?
Isn't that, Sister so-and-so supposed to do that?
Right.
She always takes off.
Yeah, it's...
Again.
Yeah,
so, exactly. And that's where I think so many leaders are held back, by being so timid. And so I think if we could reframe our perspective is kind of what I put in the notes. But Stephen Covey, he wrote, he passed away, but Stephen Covey wrote the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. And so one of the things that he talks about, he goes into a lot of detail about it, and there's even some illustrations and stuff, but he talks about a paradigm shift. And so it's basically where you see something a certain way, and because of maybe how you were raised or because of your mood, whatever, you see certain things a certain way, and then you can get a paradigm shift, and it completely changes your glasses.
Right.
I think we had a podcast about this, something about podcasts. About glasses, but it completely changes your perspective on something. And we've talked about, like, I remember I used the example of one of the kids in our Sunday school that's just was acting up all the time. Yes. And I found out that they were dealing with something at home, and it changed my perspective from like wanting to be a disciplinarian to like caring, so much about it. Anyway, so all of that, if we could reframe our perspective from, instead of, and this almost goes back to some of the stage fright stuff we talked about.
Yep.
But instead of imagining all these people in the wings just watching us with a critical eye and waiting for us to mess up, instead if we could say all these people are watching us and waiting for a moment of inspiration. What are they going to do next?
Yes. And that, even tonight we had our Bible quizzing, our beginners, so that's ages, I think 6 through 8, and they were terrors tonight. Not a single one of them that I could say was good. Some started out good, and then because of how the others were acting, my son was one of them.
It
was the worst. My daughter. It's like, what are you doing? Like, we have 40 minutes, and we don't need you talking. We don't need you talking.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, one's laying on the floor. Next thing you know, one's talking again. And it's like, you guys, if we can't do the simple stuff here, we can't have fun later. And it's like, okay, so, it just, again, but they're looking to me, they're looking to the who's in charge there, and we're trying to do all this, and it can be frustrating, but remember where we're going with it, and
exactly.
Hey, I can either lead them, or I can just let them kind of
well, and sometimes, and this is maybe getting off topic a little bit, but sometimes we can think we're being the good guy or the cool guy by letting it go too much. And I think way back in the day, Dr. Dobson from Focus on the Family talked about this. But kids they want to find the line. They're trying to find the line.
Yep.
And we interpret that as bad behavior, and it is bad behavior. But he talked about something. There's a whole illustration about it. But they're just trying to find where is that boundary where you're going to say, okay, that is it. You crossed the line, and you're getting punished or whatever.
Yep.
And so we as leaders in Sunday school, as leaders of a team or whatever, sometimes, especially with kids, we have to establish those boundaries for them. We have to establish those lines and say, look, this is the parameters.
Right.
And I do mean it.
Yep. Some direct, definitely, if we're not directing them and then yeah.
And then that even goes deeper into, you know, like plan of salvation and biblical lessons. Is if we can let them, I mean, we have a blast in Sunday school.
Yeah.
We talk about it all the time. We have a blast. We use comedy a lot. We have fun with it. But if we can let them know that, yeah, even though we're having a good time, we're having fun, this is a serious, you know, concept, or this is something that you do want to take home with you. This is, we have a lot of fun with the Bible story or whatever, but this really happened, or, you know, however we're presenting it, whatever we're doing.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think, and that goes back to reframing, you know, our vision or our perspective, that paradigm shift. If we can think, and I'm guilty of it too. If we can think, take the focus off of me, it's not about, you know, oh, am I cool or whatever, but instead, they need me. They need me to show up.
Yeah.
They need me to step up and be a leader.
And so again, that kind of goes into just like, okay, so I messed up. Like I didn't give them enough. Hey, you guys, done. You're done now. And we carried on too far. And then it was even downstairs after we did finish our more serious part of practice, and then we finish it up generally with a fun game or something, and it carried into down there. And it's like, you guys, you know,
it's like and we're talking about discipline now, but still, I think it's good stuff. But I remember talking about, I did a lesson, it might have been for youth or it might have been Sunday school, but I was saying, imagine trying to play a game of basketball with no rules. And it sounds cool at first, you know, those young boys, no rules, right? You know, but really, the rules are, the structure are what makes it fun.
Yep.
That's how it is cool, is because you do have these rules in place, and you do have the structure in place, and now we can make it fun.
Yeah.
And so even if you want to have some kind of wild, crazy game, somewhere there's got to be some rules, or if it's just not fun anymore. You know, it just gets too crazy.
Yeah, now you have kids just walking all over, and it's like some want to participate and others don't. And then it's like, we're here for one purpose.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Well, the other thing is embracing vulnerability. And so this goes back to, you know, being stuck because you're like deer in the headlights, froze,
right? Because
you're afraid of messing up. If we can understand, and I've come to terms with this in my old age, I've come to terms with this more and more, of just being vulnerable, meaning like, hey, I make mistakes. And so I'm trying to help others, you know, like, okay, so when you're speaking on stage, if you have to do some public speaking, like teaching or something, whether it's in Sunday school, or I was thinking about this with the children's ministry workshop down in Redlands, California. If you were speaking and you are thinking of, okay, do they think I'm cool? I mean, I want people to think I'm cool. You know, do they think I'm cool, or do they think I'm dumb? Do they think I'm stupid?
Right.
If you are thinking of it in those terms, you can actually lock yourself up, and you're trying to go down your notes, and you're just like, you know, self-conscious and looking, and versus if you can walk out and say, okay, I have a topic that I'm teaching. These people came to this session because they wanted to hear it. So I need to help them. How can I help them?
Right.
And that goes back to, now I am showing up for them. It's not about me. And so then if I fumble a word or something, I'll just be vulnerable and oops, and people laugh and they get they're with you.
Right.
You know, what's that? They're laughing with you, not at you.
Yes. And keep saying that to yourself. Keep saying that to yourself. It's nope.
Yeah, and so embracing that vulnerability, and that goes back to the opening we do every week on the podcast, is see the magic or disaster
absolutely
that happens behind the scenes. We've talked about this before in the podcast, but one of the ones I'll mention is right here, right upstairs where we are right now, and of course behind the cameras there's some slides and stuff, but right in this area, we built a river
Mm-hmm.
And now the building was unfinished, so we didn't have carpet and there was no sheetrock. So, there's certain risks that you weigh, right? We might not do this now. But we built this river and it leaked.
Oh, yes.
And I mean, it was downstairs. It was just dumping water. And so it was a disaster. I mean, it was a mess. And we had put some insulation underneath the plastic because we were afraid the plastic would rub and get a hole.
And tear, yeah.
So the insulation got all wet. I mean, it was disgusting. It was a nasty mess. One night I was up here till I was on a Saturday night up here till Sunday morning. People showed up for practice. I was still in my jeans and stuff, all sweaty and nasty because I had been up here all night cleaning up, mopping up the mess and trying to redo it. So it was a disaster, and I wouldn't suggest it for anybody. But out of all of that, this big disaster came something very, very cool. And we have pictures to prove it, is we had a live river right up here in this area. Probably, I don't know, the linear feet of it was probably 30-something feet.
Oh, yeah.
30 or
at least
more.
That. Yep.
And it was about 4 feet wide, and it was going, and it had rushing water. I mean, one corner had white water rapids because it was going around so fast. And because we had pumps and stuff in it. Had some blue dye in there, and we put actual rocks in it. It turned out awesome. I could truly say is epic.
Yeah.
And so that was the magic, but there was a disaster all behind that before we got there.
Yep.
And that wasn't like an emergency situation like a lifeguard. That wasn't a situation like teaching salvation or whatever. So it wasn't a dire thing. But those kids were waiting for us to show up and do something epic, and we did it.
Yeah.
Because we showed up and we made some mistakes.
Yeah, exactly.
And we had to, I mean, I had people tease me, about it. And, hey, we made mistakes, but it was awesome.
It's true. And you look back in any sort of grand invention or discovery, there's always failure.
Oh, yeah.
Always failure before that. So to think that, one, if you're thinking, well, I can't do this because I'll make a mistake or I'll fail or whatever. That's everyone in the history of mankind.
Of course, you will.
That's how you gain. I'm trying to think of this thing. I was trying to think of it, but you don't have any sort of success without failure.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, I can't remember. There's a saying.
There is a saying.
There's the opposite saying is failure is not an option or whatever. But it is an option, and it should be. John C. Maxwell. I reference him like almost every podcast because I read his stuff so much. But he has a book called I believe the title is "Failing Forward," and that's what it's about.
Yeah, like the only failure is if you stop. You failed, and now, I'm not going to do this anymore.
Oh, that's good.
There's a saying in there too somewhere, and it's like, but
that's the truth.
Like if you just fail and be like, okay, I'm not doing it again. Well, yeah, you failed now. You
have failed. Yeah, exactly.
You hadn't failed before. You just didn't accomplish what you had set out to do. And that's, I mean, you look at that with New Year's resolutions and stuff, and people say, well, if I don't set any goals, then I won't.
Yeah,
I won't have to break anything or whatever. And it's true. It's like, well,
like if you don't aim at anything, you'll hit it every time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which it's kind of true because not one of us has just come up here or done something through our children's ministry and been like, successful right out the bat. I didn't mess up. No, everything. I've never misquoted something or done the skit wrong or
and here's the thing is if you can't look back in the past year or maybe even less time than that and find somewhere where you failed, you're probably not doing enough. You're not stretching enough. You're not and this is, I'm preaching to myself now, is you're not pushing the limits enough. If you haven't messed up on something and like, oops, I got to change that, then you're probably not pushing those boundaries.
That's true.
You're in your comfort zone.
Yeah, you're just there.
Yeah.
Yep. That's good.
I remember this story. It was so funny. Pastor told it a long time ago. So we have a Christian school in our church. And I remember this story. when in the Christian school, when you get done with they call them goals, when you get done with your goals, your workload, then there's certain activities you can do, and you know, it's probably changed since I was involved in the school. But anyway, so there's different things you can do. Well, this boy, he had like put up his flag, like, can I do, you know, what can I do or whatever. And so they gave him like something to play with, and he put up his flag because he got bored with that. And like, okay, they give him something else. I don't know all the. Right. It'd be better if I knew the details, but they gave him all these different things, and then, well, read your Bible, and so he's reading his Bible. So then I think Pastor, he comes over and he's like, yes, you know, answers his flag, and he's like, can I have something else to do? He's like, well, you could read your Bible. He's like, oh, I already read that. Like, and it was almost like, you know, I read that, the whole thing, you know, I'm done.
I'm done. I read it.
That's like when people, my kids, and even other people, sometimes they'll tell me like, well, I've tried that before. And I'm like, okay, but, you know, I've been there and it does work. So you tried that before. How much? What did you try? You know? I remember Seth Godin, another guy I like to read some of his stuff. He's a marketing guy. He talks about, you know, if you have a failed book or a book that hasn't launched, or he has something I like, is he said there's no such thing as writer's block. And so he talks about writer's block, and I can't remember the exact how he terms it, but he says basically that show me all of your crumpled up pieces of paper. Show me all your throwaways that you've done. And his point is, if you don't have a garbage can full of throwaways, to speak metaphorically, then you're not there yet. Yeah. You haven't failed yet. Yeah. And so if you can push through a little bit more, then you're going to stop talking about how you failed, because you're going to find that you did it. You know?
Yeah. That's good. I like that.
So, okay, so the other thing is focus on your team. And so this goes back to kind of what I was talking about with speaking, is if instead of focusing on your own self and the critical eyes, is focus on your team, or even on, if we're talking in stage terms, on your audience, or in Sunday school, if you focus on the kids. Instead of putting the focus on you, on like, oh, I got to get this right. And we want to do a good job. We do want to get it right. We do, yep. And once in a great while, most of our scripts are bullet point. Once in a great while, we'll have some kind of dialogue that has to happen, especially if it's biblical dialogue. We want to get it right. Like, you know, Moses and the voice of God or something.
Yeah, we don't want to be messing up too many key points there.
Yeah.
Like, wait, what?
So we want to get it right. But if we could focus on the kids and say, okay, how can I get this message across to them? Then it takes the pressure off almost, you know, of myself. It's like takes the spotlight off of me, because I'm just trying to help.
Yes. Yeah. I like that. I mean, I guess, it just goes back to, it's not always about you. It's not always about me. It's not always about you. We're children's ministry.
We're doing the work for God. And kids ministry is I think one of the most forgiving areas in some ways, you know,
I
with
think
the stage stuff, you know. But I still, and we've talked about it, I still know that people can get nervous. And here's the thing too, is for those that might be listening and maybe you're not involved in children's ministry yet, and you're thinking about it. Maybe that's how you found this podcast.
Push forward.
That's a classic example of they're waiting for you to show up.
Yeah.
They're waiting for you to step out and lead and do your part in kids ministry. Yeah. And I'll take that a step further, because I know, there's a lot of people I have no idea that listen to this podcast, but I know several of the people that are faithful listeners. And I was take it a step further and say, in the apostolic movement, because this is an apostolic podcast, we're apostolic children's ministry, the apostolic movement, we need people to step up and write that book that you've been thinking about. Start that podcast that you've been thinking about. We need people to step up, create that curriculum, write those songs. We need that, because we want the apostolic movement, the truth, we want that to be the leading element and the cutting edge.
Yes.
Instead of us going to all these other resources.
Yep. Yeah. How many years ago there wasn't resources like we have now, like the fellowship we have with all the different people that we come in contact with,
right.
Especially you're obviously a lot more contact with a lot of other children ministry leaders, and Brother Booker for one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to be able to encourage others to do that. Because it's not so much for the benefit of yourself. It's you're going to benefit, or you could impact and benefit
somebody else,
a child's life, another. It's almost
another
it's limitless.
Kids ministry leader.
Yep.
Yeah, you can make an impact. And the thing is, like, and kind of being transparent, I guess here, but with this podcast, I talked to Pastor when I first started, made the decision to start it. I talked to him in depth about it, and I said, my idea, now I want it to grow, and I want, we started doing the videos and stuff, and that's just kind of the next phase, I guess. I do want it to grow and everything, but it's not because it's like, hey, look at me.
Right. No.
Because I do want to help people, and I know you mentioned Brother Booker, good friend of ours.
Yeah.
He has helped countless people, including us,
right?
Including our kids ministry, and so I get comments all the time. Some of them, most of them through like a chat or WhatsApp or a text. But and sometimes at conferences, at various conferences. But I get comments about the podcast. Like, I've had people say, "Oh, that helped me so much." I've had people say, "Hey, I just listened to Thus and Such podcast, and we're gonna do that this Sunday."
Cool.
That's my favorite. I mean, that's cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's
and so that is like, and I've told Pastor about it, and that makes it worth it. That's like, okay, this is. It's not just like, oh, that makes me feel cool or good. It's like we're doing what we set out to do.
Right.
We're trying to help others.
Not the self glorification. It's the self help in others. It's
and it makes us better too.
Yeah, exactly.
It makes us better in those connections.
Pumps us up a little bit more to be like, okay, what else can we do to help people?
Which leads right into the next point is taking action.
Right.
And that's one of the best ways to overcome like that, all that timidness, or I talk about, one of my quotes that I say all the time is motivation is a byproduct of doing. And my concept is don't wait to be motivated, just do it, and then the motivation will come.
Right.
Well, I think the same thing. If we take action, you're kind of timid and you're like, okay, well, I'm just gonna go for it.
Yep.
And when you do, the confidence comes.
Yes. I would agree, definitely.
And the momentum.
Yep.
The momentum comes.
Yep. It's definitely a confidence if you just, all right, hey, I'm committed. I said yes. I said I'd be in it. Now what am I going to do? Okay, now I'm going to do this. All right, well, I'm going to go do it how I think I can, the best of my ability.
We'll talk about the Bible quizzing. There's an example right there.
Yep.
You had kind of volunteered for a certain part or something.
Yeah, I jumped in, dare I say, blindly, just going, yeah, I'll help coach. And I didn't, in my mind, it's like, yeah, I'll help.
You'll just like be there.
I'll be there to help, support who's in charge of it, And I haven't done this. Like I've helped on and off here the last couple of years when I can. But other than that, it's been about 11 years since we first started.
Wow.
Back when we didn't have kids and other commitments in life and stuff. So it was like, and now it's like, all right, I'm in it.
And
now it's like, okay, well, now how do I improve it on my end for the kids? And it's still a fog right now because this is our 1 month, and I've only been here for 3 of them. So last week being just so busy and stuff, it's like I'm playing catch up at work, at home, everything. So,
but didn't you you thought you were going to kind of help or whatever? Now you're running the one
running the beginners, and it was like, oh, okay,
and that there's another example of you just like, okay, I have to show up.
Yeah,
I'll
do
take
it.
You know, I'll step in.
Whatever happens, happens. If it totally fails and bombs, okay, well, we'll reevaluate.
We'll learn from it. Yeah.
And next year, hey, I will be the assistant to the.
Yeah.
Especially these kids, man, they're a fun age, but they're also like, I want to strangle you age.
Oh, man.
You know, when they're not listening and stuff. And it's like, you were generally, one kid in particular, generally he's Mr. Quiet and every once in a while you have a, hey, focus. But not tonight. And in particular, it was just like, oh my goodness.
Oh, it was a mess.
Laying on the floor every other second, just like.
Well, and then right after that, my wife did kids choir, and it was the same. I was like,
something in the air tonight. I don't know. Maybe. Maybe
we have Sunday school like that sometimes.
Yes, it's true. It's true. So
it's a disaster.
Yep. And it's like, just take a moment, and it's like, okay, I'll send something out to the parents and be like, hey, whatever you guys fed them tonight, don't do it again.
Don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that. That was a bad choice. I mean, yeah. And then you got, But that's what it is. And again, you can either just be like, shut down, be like, no, or I think just step in and, hey, make the most of it, make the best of it, go for it.
Well, another John C. Maxwell quote, and I know we got to wrap up, we're running out of time, but is everything rises and falls on leadership. And he, of course, is a leadership guru. But going back to, kind of what I was talking about, apostolic, content, but the world needs, but also the apostolic movement, the apostolic church needs leaders.
Right.
We need leaders. We need good leaders. And so I think that out of the 100 volunteers, we might get one or two bad apples that they think they're a leader. Right. But really, we need people to step up, to show up. We need them to say, okay, I'll do it. I don't know if I can do a good job, but I'll learn on the job and I'll do it.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think the majority of people don't step into a leadership and just are like, take off. Everything's going perfect. There's bumps, and that's what you learn from. That's how you become better at leadership.
There's a story about a boy and his dad on a trip somewhere, and they it might have been out of the country, and they went to this it was a village, like old village. And there was this old man sitting out there, just weather-beaten face and bleached hair, from the sun, older gentleman. And so the boy, all excited, I don't know if the story's true, but the boy, all excited, he runs up to the old man, and he said, and they've been learning, on this road trip, they've been learning about history and great people and everything. And he said, were there any great leaders born here? Any great men born here? And the old man said, nope. Only babies. And his point, there might have been some famous people that came out of that village, but nobody's born as a leader. And so if you look at somebody and say, oh, they got it.
Yeah.
Well, somewhere they didn't have it.
No.
And they had to step up and they had to do it. All right, well, I don't think we have time for a recap because we're out of time. We're over. So I think that's a wrap.
All right. Get in there. Get out there and do it.
All right.